My name is Arlene Mortensen, 24 years old, ICU nurse at Massachusetts General. When I was 17, my twin sister Sloane hid my Harvard acceptance letter, and our parents told me, "We're paying for your sister. She has a future. You don't." They wrote her a check for $237,000. They wrote me nothing. A year later, our grandmother died and left me $389,000. Sloane filed paperwork saying I was dead. 6 years later, I scrolled past my own black and white photo on her Instagram, captioned, "For the sister I lost." Last May, Sloane gave the commencement speech at Harvard Law. The keynote speaker walked onto the stage, set down a single folder, and looked at her without saying a word. Sloane went pale before the silence broke. If you have ever been written out of your own family, stay with me. May 22nd, 2025. Sanders Theater, Harvard. I had walked past this building 4 times in 6 years. Today was the first time I went inside. The wood was darker than I remembered from photos. Old oak, polished, paneling carved with the names of men who had died in wars before my grandmother was born. The Veritas banners hung from the balcony in the same red velvet they had used for 170 ceremonies. Sunlight fell through the high windows in long bars. It was warm for May. The air conditioning was struggling. A young usher checked my badge twice. The badge said, "Guest of Speaker, T. Brennan." He looked at the badge, then at my face, then at the badge again. He almost asked something. He didn't. Row 14, aisle seat. I sat down with the folder on my lap. The folder was a burgundy hardcover, a 4 size, 2 inches thick, with a small combination lock on the spine. There was a handwritten sticker in the corner. One word, Mortensen. Theo's handwriting, black marker, neat capitals. I did not open it. I checked 3 tabs at 3 different positions, counted in my head, closed the cover, and rested my hands flat on top. In row 2, my mother was already crying. She had practiced that cry. I knew because I had seen it before, at my grandmother's funeral, 6.5 years earlier. The same handkerchief, the same way she pressed it under one eye and not the other. She turned the handkerchief once in her lap, and I saw the embroidery. A single curling letter S, not H. My mother's first name was Helena. The handkerchief did not have her initial on it. Sloane had given it to her on Mother's Day the previous year. My mother had carried it everywhere since. My father sat next to her and clapped at the wrong times. Every group of graduates that came down the aisle, he started clapping a beat early and stopped a beat late. He did not see me. His eyes scanned the rows looking for something he could not name. They passed over row 14 and kept going. The program had gold lettering on cream cardstock. I read the page twice. Sloane M. Mortensen, Student Commencement Speaker. Theodora E. Brennan, J.D., Keynote Address. 2 names on one piece of paper. One had spent 6 years stealing the other. The dean took the stage and welcomed the families. 1,200 guests in tiered seats. 23 rows of black robes on the floor. The university marshal led the procession, and the air smelled like old wood and warm wool and somebody's expensive perfume 2 rows back. When they called Sloane's name, she walked out from the wing. She had her hair in a high knot. The same knot I had worn through high school, the only style I had ever worn. She had stolen my hair the year she stole my future. Today she was wearing both. She waved at our parents. The wave was for the room. She had practiced that too. Press-trained, photogenic, head tilted 3 degrees to the left, so her left earring caught the stage light. She paused at the podium for the photographers in the press row. She smiled. I felt something in my chest fold neatly closed and stay closed. Theo Brennan was seated in the row of honored guests behind the podium, between Dean Crawford and the head of the Law School Alumni Association. Theo was 61. White hair pulled back. Black robe. Hands folded on her knee. She was looking down at row 14. She did not nod. She did not smile. She just looked. I let her look. The dean said a few words about courage and the rule of law and the next generation. He introduced Sloane as a remarkable young advocate whose personal story will move you all today. Sloane stepped to the mic. She put one hand on each side of the podium. She inhaled the way they teach you to inhale at communications coaching. She looked up to the back of the room. She held that look for 2 full beats. And then she began. Thank you, Dean Crawford, class of 2025. I am here today because I lost someone I loved before I was old enough to understand what I had lost. I heard, through the speakers, the precise sound an envelope makes when a thumb slips under the seal of glue. I had heard that sound at age 17, in our kitchen in Greenwich, Connecticut. I was hearing it now, in Sanders Theater, while the woman who had opened that envelope was telling 1,200 strangers a story about a sister she had buried. I did not move. The folder was still on my lap. The combination on the lock was 0228. My birthday and Sloane's. Same date, same year, 8 minutes apart. I let her speak. I had better start at the beginning. April 2018. Greenwich, Connecticut. The mailbox at 19 Maple Lane was a Schwartz Model 1812, painted black, with White House numbers. 3 keys had been cut for that mailbox. My father had one. My mother had one. Sloane had one. I had never had a key. I had asked once, when I was 11. My mother told me I was forgetful and would lose it. Sloane did not lose hers. Sloane had her key on a small enamel keychain shaped like a bumblebee. She brought in the mail every afternoon. I came home from school on a Wednesday in late March. The mailbox door was open. There was nothing inside. I closed it. There were supposed to be 2 envelopes. There was one. I did not know that yet. I knew only that I had been refreshing the Harvard applicant portal every 15 minutes for 3 days, and the status had not changed. I had a 4.0 GPA across 4 years. I had written my admissions essay about my grandmother, about the way she had taught me to read with one finger on the line and the other in the margin, as if every book were a place we were walking through together. I had spent a summer at MIT in a math program. I had been recommended by 3 teachers and the head of guidance counseling. I had reasons to believe I would get in. That night, my parents threw a small party. They had a cardboard sign in the kitchen, Sharpie on white poster board. Welcome to Harvard, Sloane. My mother had made lasagna. My father had bought a bottle of Corbel, California, $14.99 at Stu Leonard's. The receipt still sitting in the kitchen drawer because my father saved every receipt, and was filling 4 flutes. I asked my mother, quietly, if any other mail had come. She turned without looking at me. Sweetie, not everyone gets in. Don't make this about you. My father raised his glass to Sloane. He winked. He said, to the future. I said I was going upstairs. In Sloane's room, I took her calculator off her desk. I had told her I was borrowing it. The desk was clean. She had a stack of SAT prep books on the corner. 3 Princeton Review, 2 Barron's, and a Kaplan she had not opened. The Kaplan was thicker than the others, its pages still uncreased. I picked it up to bring to my room. The corner of an envelope slipped out from between the pages. It had a crimson seal. It was addressed to Arlene C. Mortensen. It had been opened. Inside, the letter began with the words, "My friends in admissions chats had described. We are pleased to inform you." Someone had drawn a small blue circle around those 4 words with a ballpoint pen. The circle was tight. The pen had pressed hard. I read it 3 times. I checked the postmark. March 28th, 2018. The same postmark Sloane's letter had carried. I had seen Sloane's envelope 2 days ago, framed already in our parents' bedroom, and the postmarks were identical to the day. Same mail run, same delivery. She had not even hidden it well. She had only hidden it from people who were never going to look. I walked downstairs holding the letter. Sloane was at the counter laughing at something my father had said. She turned. She saw the letter in my hand. She did not look surprised. I put the letter on the granite island, face up. I got in too. Sloane's smile did not move. I thought you didn't apply. I had applied with her. We had sat in the same college counselor's office. She knew. My mother set down her glass. Sweetie, even if that's real, and we'd have to verify, we cannot pay for two. I can apply for financial aid. My father shook his head. Slow. Sloane is going to need our full attention. She's going to need us to be present. We can't split that. He paused. He did not look at me. We're paying for your sister. She has a future. You don't. My mother nodded once. The way she nodded when a contractor told her a number she had already agreed to. Sloane said gently, Mom, she'll figure something out. She always does. My father drank. There was a printed spreadsheet on the countertop. I had not seen it before. Sloane, Harvard cost of attendance 2018 to 2022. Tuition, room, board, books, travel, spring break visits. Total at the bottom, $237,000, with a column of estimated annual increases. My mother had used red font for the increases. She had used green for the savings projections from my father's brokerage. There was no second sheet for me. I picked up the letter. I went upstairs. I did not eat the lasagna. When I came back down an hour later to call my grandmother, the letter was no longer where I had put it. I had folded it, slid it under my keyboard. Sloane had been in my room. Sloane did not look at me when I passed her on the stairs. I did not find that letter again for almost 7 years. I called my grandmother from the landline in the basement. I closed the door so my parents could not hear. She listened. She had Parkinson's, early stage. Her voice did not shake yet. Her voice was the calmest thing I had ever heard. Honey, she said, get on the next bus. I have a room. I have your name in my will. They cannot take that. Don't argue with them. Don't beg. Don't explain yourself. Come here. I packed in 3 days. A navy JanSport backpack, 2 pairs of jeans, 5 shirts, a toothbrush. The Susan Sontag paperback she had given me at 16, dog-eared on the page about courage, my driver's license, $43 in babysitting cash, a Greyhound ticket from Bridgeport to Boston that I bought online with a debit card I had opened at 16 with a librarian's reference, $63, seat 12B. The night I left, my father did not come downstairs. My mother stood at the glass door and watched me drag my backpack down the driveway. She closed the door before I reached the street. 3 weeks later, my grandmother died. I got there 11 hours late. The bus from Boston to Hartford had been rerouted around a fire on I-91. By the time I reached the house, she had been gone since dawn, and my mother was already there, organizing the kitchen the way she organized every kitchen she walked into. She did not look up at me. My sister was in our grandmother's bedroom, going through the dresser. I did not say anything to either of them. I sat on my grandmother's porch in the dark. The flannel shirt she had left out for me was folded on the rocker. It still smelled like her. I went back to Boston with the flannel. I had no apartment. I had $36 left after the bus. I walked from South Station up to Cambridge with my backpack on both shoulders and asked at the YWCA whether they had a bed. They did. $36 per night. I almost laughed. 3 days before she died, my grandmother had wired me $300 through Western Union. I picked it up the next morning at a Stop and Shop on Mass Avenue with my driver's license and the confirmation number she had texted me. The cashier slid the cash through the slot in an envelope. There was a printed receipt with the date and the amount. There was also a handwritten line on the slip in her handwriting. "Don't go home." I kept that slip. I have it now in a fireproof box in my apartment. It is the first piece of evidence I ever stored without knowing it would matter. I called my mother from a payphone in the YWCA lobby. "Hi." "What?" "I just wanted to let you know I'm okay. Sloan is doing well at Harvard. Don't bother her." She hung up. I did not call again for 6 years. I enrolled in the Certified Nursing Assistant program at Bunker Hill Community College in early January. 6 weeks of coursework, a clinical placement, a state exam. I passed it in the first week of February 2019. The next Monday, I had a badge that said Arlene Mortensen, CNA, and a position on the night shift at Mount Auburn Hospital, $19 an hour, scrubs from a uniform supply store on Cambridge Street. I worked 7 nights on, 2 off. I slept on a futon in a shared apartment in Alston with 3 roommates I rarely saw. I did not eat in restaurants. I did not buy anything new for 2 years. In the spring, I applied to the BSN program at UMass Boston. I wrote my essay about my grandmother again because she was the only person who had ever told me, plainly, that I would have a future. The admissions office offered me a seat with a financial aid package, a Mass grant, a Pell Grant, and federal loans totaling $34,000. I matriculated in the fall of 2019. For 3 years, I did 3 jobs at once: aide, math tutor, weekend phlebotomist. I slept 4 hours on weekdays. I slept 8 hours on Sundays. I did not have hobbies. I did not have a boyfriend. I did not call home. I did not call Sloan. Once, in the second year, I saw a woman who looked like my mother in the produce aisle of the Stop and Shop in Quincy. I left without buying anything. I sat in the bus shelter for 40 minutes until the trembling stopped. Above my dorm desk, all 4 years, was a piece of printer paper with one line in blue ink. "Courage is as contagious as fear. Susan Sontag." My grandmother had underlined it the year before she died. I graduated summa cum laude in May 2022. There was one person in the audience for me: Bridget O'Shea, a nurse from Mount Auburn who had taken me under her wing my first month on the job. She had told me, after my second night of crying in the linen closet, "You don't sleep, Mortensen. When did you last eat something not from a vending machine?" She had brought me sandwiches every shift after that. She brought a bouquet of carnations to graduation. She wore her good shoes. Nobody from Greenwich came. In July 2022, I started at Mass General Surgical ICU. I had wanted ICU since the second clinical of nursing school. I wanted the kind of nursing where the line between life and death was a number on a screen, and you watched the number, and you did not look away. In late November 2022, a stroke patient named Theodora Brennan came in. She was 61. She had been found by her husband on the floor of her home office in Beacon Hill at 5 in the morning. She came to my unit on her 3rd day. I was the night nurse for 9 consecutive shifts. She woke up on the 7th night. I was at the bedside checking a line when her eyes opened. She looked at my badge. She looked at my face. She looked at my badge again. "What's your name, dear?" "Your full name." "Arlene Mortensen, ma'am." "Registered nurse." She closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them, she said, "Mortensen. Are you related to a Sloan Mortensen?" I did not understand the question. I told her, evenly, that I was. She did not explain. She closed her eyes again. When she was discharged 2 weeks later, she asked the floor manager for my email address. She wrote me a thank you note. We exchanged Christmas cards. In the spring of 2023, she invited me for coffee, and we met at the Charles Hotel. And I did not realize then that she was about to become the person who would eventually return to me everything that had been taken. She did not tell me that day. She told me in December 2024. In November 2024, a young woman came into the ICU at 3 in the morning, 22 years old, fentanyl overdose. She had been brought in by a roommate. We worked on her for 90 minutes. She did not survive. I did the post-mortem care. I called the family. I went home. I walked into my studio in Somerville at 4 in the morning, peeled off the scrubs, and sat on the edge of my bed. I had not opened Instagram in 6 years. I did not even know if my account still existed. I opened the app the way you open a door you know shouldn't still be unlocked. The first friend suggestion was Sloan Mortensen, Harvard Law 25. The pinned post was a black and white photograph. A girl, 16, sitting on the porch of her grandmother's house in Mystic, Connecticut, in a flannel shirt that had once been folded on a rocker, smiling at someone outside the frame. I have to go back to June 2017 to explain what Sloan did. My grandmother, Eleanor Halverson, Nellie to her bridge club, never to my mother, was diagnosed with early-stage Parkinson's that spring. 6 weeks after the diagnosis, she drove herself to a Boston law firm called Brennan, Ashford, and Vance on the 26th floor of a tower on State Street. She had a 9 a.m. appointment with a junior associate named Theodora Brennan, who had been recommended by a friend at the Hartford Bridge Club. Theo was 33 then, 3 years out of clerkship. Junior to a senior partner named Mark Ashford, who handled most of the firm's estate work. My grandmother sat in Theo's office for an hour and a half. She told her, in the order she felt mattered, the following things. She had 2 granddaughters. They were twins. They were not the same. One had been given everything. The other had been given a chair at the small table since she could walk. She wanted to make sure that, when she was gone, the second one would have a future her parents had decided not to give her. She wanted $389,000, the proceeds, after capital gains, of her second house in Mystic, placed in trust for Arlene C. Mortensen, distributable upon enrollment in higher education or upon her 21st birthday, whichever came first. She wanted Theodora Brennan as executor. She wanted a residual clause. If Arlene predeceases or cannot be located after reasonable search, balance to Sloan. She added the residual clause herself, in pencil, in the margin of the draft. She told Theo, "I am not adding this because I trust the other one. I am adding it because the law makes me name a contingency, and I refuse to leave the line blank." The trust was signed June 12, 2017. File BAV-2017-1183. In August 2018, Sloan heard about the residual clause. I did not know this then. I learned it later, in a deposition. My mother and my grandmother had a fight at the kitchen table in Greenwich the week before I left home. Sloan was upstairs. The argument was about money. My mother accused my grandmother of playing favorites. My grandmother told her the trust was not negotiable. My mother said, "Then God forbid anything happens to Arlene, because Sloan is the only one who deserves it." Sloan was sitting on the upstairs landing. Sloan heard my grandmother's reply. "Then God will not forbid it, Helena, because if anything happens to Arlene, it will not be God. It will be one of you." Sloan learned from that conversation that the line in the trust was, predeceases or cannot be located. 3 months later, my grandmother was dead. I was 18. I was in Boston. I had stopped speaking to my mother. Sloan was a freshman at Harvard. On March 2, 2019, an obituary appeared on a website called legacytributes.org, a small online memorial site that allows users to pay $40 and create a memorial page. The page named Arlene C. Mortensen, age 18, of Greenwich, Connecticut, deceased February 27, 2019, of an apparent fentanyl overdose in Las Vegas, Nevada. There was no funeral home. There was no source. There was no photograph. The page had been created by a user account registered to an iCloud email that traced 4 years later, to Sloane's iPhone. The $40 payment had been made on her Bank of America debit card. On March 21, 2019, Sloane filed an affidavit at the Suffolk County Probate and Family Court in Boston. Form CJD 411, filed under penalty of perjury. The affidavit stated that her sister, Arlene C. Mortensen, had passed away in Las Vegas, Nevada, on February 27, 2019, of a fentanyl overdose, that the family had been notified by friends of the deceased, that no body had been recovered for transport, that no insurance claim was being made, and that the deceased had no living issue. Attached was a printout of the LegacyTributes.org obituary. Attached was a one-page declaration signed by Helena Mortensen, my mother, stating that the family has no contact with our daughter and has reason to believe she has passed. Attached was a separate, almost identical declaration signed by Garrett Mortensen, my father. The notarization was performed remotely by a notary named Cordelia K. Whitford in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Cordelia, when later interviewed, would tell investigators that she had performed the notarization over a video call and had not been physically present. Massachusetts at the time required physical presence for probate affidavits. The notarization was, in legal terms, void. The affidavit was reviewed at the firm of Brennan, Ashford, and Vance because the trust executor was Theo Brennan. Theo flagged it. She wrote a memo. She noted that there was no death certificate. She noted that an online obituary on a $40 website was not corroborating evidence. She noted that the family declarations were not first-hand. She wanted the firm to require an order of presumption from the court, with notice and search. Mark Ashford, her senior partner, told her, "The family is unanimous. The probate judge has accepted the filing. Move it forward." She moved it forward. On May 14, 2019, Wells Fargo Trust wired $389,000 from the Halverson Trust to a Bank of America checking account ending 4302, in the name of Sloane M. Mortensen, at a branch on Tremont Street in Boston. Confirmation number WF114022019. Memo line: Halverson Trust Distribution per Massachusetts. Probate Order SUF-PROB-19-0882. Sloane spent the money over 6 years. $58,000 on a one-bedroom apartment on Beacon Hill from 2019 through 2022, while her parents continued to pay her Harvard tuition out of the $237,000 they had set aside for her. $11,200 on a summer in Europe in 2021. $4,800 on a Princeton Review LSAT package in 2022. $35,000 on a deposit to Harvard Law in the fall of that year. $14,500 on handbags, sunglasses, watches, and a single Saint Laurent coat. The remainder she kept in a savings account, gathering interest at 1.5%. She walked the halls of Harvard Law in coats she paid for with my death certificate. Theo Brennan kept a copy of the file in her bottom desk drawer. The folder was craft tan. The label said Halverson/Mortensen, incomplete in her handwriting. She had not been able to undo the firm's sign-off. She had not been able to throw the folder away. For 4 years she had told herself every time she opened the drawer for paperclips that the family knew, that the family had buried their daughter, that this was their grief. In November 2022, on the third night of her ICU stay at Mass General, she opened her eyes and read a badge. Arlene C. Mortensen, RN. She did not say anything. She closed her eyes. Her vital signs spiked, then settled. She did not tell me that night. She needed to be sure. She watched me for 9 shifts. She read every chart I touched. She asked me my middle name. She asked me where I had grown up. She asked me about my grandmother. When she was discharged, she went home to Beacon Hill, walked into her home office, opened the bottom drawer, took out the folder marked incomplete, and wept for the first time in 14 years. Then she began the work of fixing it. The first thing I saw, the night the 22-year-old died in my unit, was the black and white photo. I sat on the bed in scrubs and tapped the app. The algorithm remembered me. I had not used the account since 2018. The first friend suggestion was at Sloan.Mortensen, 18.2 thousand followers. The profile picture was Sloan in a Harvard Law sweatshirt, sitting on the steps of Langdell Hall, smiling like a candidate. The bio said, "Future litigator, sister to an angel, Harvard Law 2025. The pinned post was the photograph. I knew the photograph before I tapped on it. I was the girl in the photograph. 16 years old, on my grandmother's porch in Mystic, in a flannel shirt my grandmother had given me, sitting on the wooden rail, looking off-frame at someone who had just made me laugh. My grandmother had taken that photo with her old film camera the summer of 2017. She had developed it herself. She had given me a copy. I had a copy in my fireproof box. The caption said, "6 years without you, Arlene. I carry you into every classroom. Apply for the Arlene Mortensen Memorial Scholarship in my bio. $5,000 awarded annually, 11,400 likes, 893 comments. Sloan, you are so strong. Your sister is watching you smash this semester. This is why I donated to the scholarship. Praying for your family every day. You honor her with your work." I scrolled. The post was dated March 2nd, 2024. I read every comment. I read them twice. I read the captions on the next post, and the next, and the next. Sloan in front of Langdell. Sloan at a Federalist Society dinner. Sloan in court attire on the steps of the Suffolk County Courthouse. I'm here for both of us. 22,000 likes. I scrolled 6 years. I counted 38 separate posts in which Sloan referenced her dead sister. The dead sister was always smiling. The dead sister was always 16. The dead sister was always in black and white. I screenshotted every post. I created a folder in my drive. I named it Receipts, Draft 1. I closed the laptop. The sun was coming up over the Charles. I had not slept. I went into the kitchen and opened the cabinet above the refrigerator. There was a brown cardboard banker's box on the top shelf. I had not opened it since Theo had handed it to me in the spring of 2023, when she had told me, gently, that my grandmother's old papers had been kept for me, and that whenever I was ready I could read them. I had not been ready. I lifted the lid. The first envelope on top was a small craft mailer with my name on it in my grandmother's handwriting. Inside was a folded sheet of her monogrammed stationery, embossed EH, and a single photograph in a paper sleeve. The photograph was the original of the photograph on Sloane's Instagram. Same shot, same frame, same flannel. I held it up to the light. It was an inch square smaller. There was a date written on the back in my grandmother's hand. July 2017. The note was in blue ink. "If you ever read this, it means something has gone wrong. Trust Theo Brennan. The folder she has is yours." I sat down on the kitchen floor. I held the photograph and the note in my lap. The sky outside was light gray. A bus went past the window. I did not cry. I called Mass General and told the charge nurse I needed 5 days. I called Theo Brennan at 9 that morning. When she picked up, I said, "My grandmother wrote your name on a piece of paper. I need to know why." There was a long silence on the other end. Then Theo said, "Come to my office at 3. Don't bring anything. I have everything you need." The Brennan, Ashford, and Vance offices were on the 26th floor of a tower on State Street, 3 blocks from the courthouse. Theo had moved up to equity partner in 2021. Her name was now on the door. She brought me into her corner office at 3. She closed the door. She poured 2 glasses of water. She did not sit down at her desk. She sat across from me in one of the client chairs. She put the craft folder on the table between us. She put one hand flat on top of it. I have kept this for 6 years, she said. I am sorry I did not find you sooner. I did not know whether you were alive. After 2022, I knew. I should have moved faster. I needed to be certain we could prove it before I came to you. I am asking you now to forgive that delay, but I am not asking you to forgive me. I am asking you to let me help. I waited. You have a Harvard acceptance letter. You did not see it. We have a copy. She slid a piece of paper across the table. The Crimson Seal, dated March 28, 2018, addressed to Arlene C. Mortensen. We have subpoenaed admissions. The original is on file. You were admitted. You declined by silence. They closed the file. The letter was real. I know. You did not just lose the letter. Sloane signed for it. She slid a second piece of paper. USPS Form 3811, the green delivery confirmation card. Date stamped March 30th, 2018. Recipient signature line. 2 letters and a surname. S. Mortensen. That was not the postal carrier guessing the household. The postal carrier requires a printed name. Yours was the only Mortensen at that address with a first name beginning in any letter except S. Your father is Garrett. Your mother is Helena. The signer was Sloane. I never had the mailbox key. I know. She slid a third piece of paper, a printed copy of a Suffolk County probate filing, SUF-PROB-19-0882. Affidavit of death. I read my own name typed across the top. Sloane filed this on March 21, 2019. She swore, under penalty of perjury, that you had died in Las Vegas of a fentanyl overdose. I did not flinch. Theo said, I flagged this in 2019. My senior partner overrode me. I have lived with that override every day since. The Massachusetts probate court accepted the affidavit. The presumption of death was entered. The trust funds were released. How much? $389,000. Where did it go? Bank of America checking account, ending 4302. Sloane's, May 14th, 2019. We have the wire confirmation. She slid the wire record across. She said, I have spent the last 7 months building a case. I want to walk you through what I have. I nodded. She walked me through it. She had subpoenaed the Las Vegas Metro Police Department. She had hired a private investigator in Nevada to pull every public death record between 2018 and 2025. There was no Arlene Mortensen. There was no Jane Doe matching my description. There was no police report. There was no medical examiner report. The death Sloane had sworn to had never occurred. She had subpoenaed Mass General. She had a complete employment record showing me hired in July 2022, paying federal payroll tax under my Social Security number every 2 weeks since. The IRS had a record of me alive every year that the Suffolk County Probate Court had a record of me dead. She had subpoenaed Bank of America. She had every monthly statement of Sloane's primary checking account from May 2019 through April 2025. She had highlighted the relevant lines in yellow: the Beacon Hill rent, the Europe trip, the LSAT package, the Harvard law deposit, the handbags. She had calculated exactly how much my dead body had paid for. She had retrieved the legacytributes.org obituary. She had subpoenaed the platform's user records. The account that had created the obituary had been registered to the iCloud email tied to Sloane's iPhone. The $40 payment had been made from a Bank of America card in Sloane's name. She had retained a forensic handwriting expert named Linda Voss, formerly of the FBI. Voss had analyzed an Arlene-signed secondary affidavit, a smaller document Sloane had filed with the probate, purporting to be from me, declining inheritance, against 6 known samples of my real signature, my driver's license, my MGHHR file, my BSN diploma, my apartment lease, a credit card application, a hospital sign-in. Voss had concluded with high confidence, Class 3, the highest in her industry, that the question signature was a non-genuine simulation. She had tracked down Cordelia Whitford, the notary. Cordelia had agreed, in exchange for limited immunity from the Massachusetts Notary Commission, to confirm in writing that she had performed the 2019 notarization remotely by video call and had not met Sloan in person. That alone voided the notarization under Massachusetts law as it stood in 2019. She had pulled the text messages between Sloan and my mother from May 2019. They had been recovered from my mother's iCloud backup, subpoenaed. Theo turned the printout face down before sliding it. You can read it later. I can summarize. Summarize. Your mother wrote, "Are you sure this is the only way?" Sloan wrote back, "It's not stealing if she was never going to ask for it." I let that sit in the room. Theo said, "Your mother knew. Your father signed. Whether or not he read what he signed is for him to explain to himself. I will not call him innocent." I was not going to. There is one more thing. She turned the printout back over and slid me a different piece of paper. An email from the Harvard Law School Office of Commencement, dated November 11th, 2024. The keynote speaker for the May 2025 commencement was confirmed. Theodora E. Brennan, class of 1995. The student commencement speaker was confirmed. Sloan M. Mortensen, JD 25. She said, "I have sat with this folder for 6 years. I will not sit with it for one more day, but I will not move without you. The keynote is in 5.5 months. We can file civil now. We can refer to the Suffolk DA now. Or we can wait until May. Present the evidence to her in front of the people whose recognition she stole my client's life to obtain, and then file. I am not going to recommend either path. I am going to ask you what you want." She did not look at me when she asked. I looked at the photograph I had brought with me, the original from my grandmother's box. I put it on the desk between us, next to the craft folder. "Reserve me row 14, I said. "Now I can tell you what happened on May 22nd. Sloan spoke for 6 minutes and 40 seconds. She told the room about a sister she called Arlene who had died too young, of forces our generation would spend its careers fighting, and how she had carried that grief into every brief she had ever written, and how she would carry it into every courtroom she ever stood in. She told the room she was here for 2. She told the room that loss was the original syllabus of the law. She told the room, and this was the part that made me listen the most carefully, that she had decided to attend Harvard Law because, before her sister died, her sister had been the smarter one." There was a small, shocked laugh from the audience at that. Sloan smiled at the laugh and went on. "She was the sister my parents would have paid for given the choice." The room thought she was being humble. I sat in row 14 with the burgundy folder closed on my lap and watched my mother in row 2 press the embroidered handkerchief under her left eye and not her right. Sloan closed. "Every brief I write for 2. 1,200 people stood. They clapped for 14 seconds. Sloan bowed her head. Her eyes were red. She walked off the riser to her seat in the student speaker chair, and she sat down with her hands folded in her lap, and she nodded, once, at our parents. The dean returned to the lectern. "It is now my privilege to introduce our keynote speaker, Theodora E. Brennan, class of 1995, partner at Brennan, Ashford, and Vance, and one of the great litigators of her generation." Theo stood. She walked from the row of honored guests to the podium. She set the burgundy folder down on the lectern. She did not open it. She did not look at her notes. She did not look at the audience. She looked at Sloan. The silence began. It lasted 4 seconds. 5, 7, 9. People began to shift in their seats. The dean glanced at her. Theo did not move. She did not shift her weight. She did not look away from the chair where my sister was sitting. At 11 seconds, my sister noticed. I watched the moment her face changed. It was not panic. It was recognition. It was the recognition of someone who has spent years building a building and has just heard the first beam crack. Theo looked then at the audience. She said, "Thank you, Dean Crawford. Class of 2025. Before I begin my keynote, I would like to introduce a guest in row 14. According to the records of the Suffolk County Probate and Family Court, file number SUF-PROB-19-0882, this guest died in February of 2019 of a fentanyl overdose in Las Vegas, Nevada. She is, in fact, very much alive. She is a registered nurse at Massachusetts General Hospital. She was admitted to Harvard in 2018. The same year as the speaker who has just spoken about her. The screen behind Theo lit. Slide 1. The Harvard acceptance letter, dated March 28, 2018. Addressed to Arlene C. Mortensen, the Crimson Seal. The first paragraph circled in blue ballpoint. 1,200 heads turned in unison toward row 14. Some of them found me, some of them did not. I had not stood up yet. In row 2, my father stopped clapping. He had not been clapping. He stopped looking. His head went slowly forward and stayed forward, like a man being shown the bottom of a well. Theo said, "The letter reached the house. The person who signed for it was not the person it was addressed to." Slide 2. USPS Form 3811. Date stamped March 30th, 2018. Signature line, S. Mortensen. Sloane had risen halfway out of her chair. She sat back down. The dean glanced at her and made a small, controlling gesture with his hand. Theo said, "On March 21st, 2019, the speaker before me filed a sworn affidavit at Suffolk County Probate Court declaring that the woman in row 14 was dead. She filed it under penalty of perjury." Slide 3. The affidavit. Signature line, Sloane M. Mortensen. Sloane said, "Into the air." There was no microphone in front of her, but the room was that quiet. This is a misunderstanding. There has been a..." Dean Crawford raised his hand. He shook his head once. Theo went on. Las Vegas Metro Police Department has confirmed in writing that there is no death record for an Arlene Mortensen in Clark County, Nevada, in any year between 2018 and 2025. There is no police report. There is no medical examiner finding. The death she swore to under penalty of perjury did not occur. Slide 4. The Las Vegas certification. Stamped, signed, dated. Beside it, on a split screen, an MGH employment badge. Arlene C. Mortensen, RN. Hire date, July 2022. Theo said, "While this affidavit asserts a death in 2019, the woman in row 14 has been employed at Massachusetts General Hospital since 2022. She has paid federal income tax every quarter under her Social Security number. The Internal Revenue Service has had her. The probate court did not." In row 8, a man in a navy blazer set down his program and stopped looking at the stage. He looked instead at his own hands. I learned later he was a board member of a Boston nonprofit that had given Sloane a public interest fellowship the previous summer. He resigned from the board the following Tuesday. In row 5, a woman who had been Sloane's faculty advisor for 3 years closed her eyes and did not open them again until Theo finished. I stood. I did not say anything. I just stood. I was still in row 14. The folder remained on the seat next to me. 1,200 people now had me in their sightline. Sloane saw me. I saw her see me. Her hand went up to her mouth. Slowly, like she was tasting something she had thought was clean. Theo did not pause. On May 14th, 2019, $389,000 from a trust established by Eleanor Halverson, the grandmother of both women, was wired from a Wells Fargo trust account to a Bank of America checking account in the name of the speaker before me, on the basis of the affidavit you have just seen. Slide 5. The wire confirmation. The dollar amount, in full, 12 feet high. Theo said, "She walked the halls of this school on money she received after declaring her sister dead. The funds paid the rent on a one-bedroom apartment on Beacon Hill. They paid for a summer in Europe. They paid the deposit on her seat in this graduating class." Slide 6. Beacon Hill rent, Europe, LSAT prep, Harvard Law deposit, handbags, Saint Laurent, the numbers stacked. Each line item appeared on the screen for 6 seconds. The audience read them in silence. Somewhere in the upper balcony, a phone camera shutter went off, and the woman holding it apologized so quickly the sound was audible from the floor. In row 2, my mother had her hand over her mouth. In the row of honored guests, Dean Crawford had picked up the small landline beside his chair and said something into it. A man in a dark suit walked briskly along the side aisle and exited through the rear door. I would learn later he had gone to call the office of general counsel. Theo said, "Finally, the speaker before me has, since 2019, used a photograph of her sister to cultivate an audience and to operate a memorial scholarship in her sister's name." Slide 7. The black and white photograph. Original. From my grandmother's box. Slide 8. The same photograph. Sloane's Instagram. Caption visible. 6 years without you, Arlene. 11,400 likes. Theo said, "She built a personal brand on her sister's face. She has been operating a scholarship fund commemorating a person who has been paying federal taxes." She stepped half a pace back from the microphone. She said, "Arlene Mortensen, would you like to come up?" I walked. It took me 23 seconds to reach the stage. I walked the way I walked the rounds at Mass General. Even, deliberate, no faster, no slower. I went up the riser stairs. I crossed the stage. Theo stepped aside. I put both hands flat on the podium. I looked at Sloane. Then I looked at my mother. Then I looked at my father. I said, "My name is Arlene Mortensen. I am 24 years old. I am a registered nurse. I was admitted to Harvard in 2018. I was told by my parents that I had no future. I was told by the Suffolk County Probate Court that I was dead. I am neither." I paused. "Sloane, Mom, Dad, I did not come here today to ask for an apology. I came here to be on the record." My father stood up in row 2. He did not come toward me. He turned and walked, head still slightly down, toward the rear doors of Sanders Theater. He walked the whole length of the aisle. 1,200 heads followed him. He pushed open the door. He did not look back. My mother stayed in her seat with both hands over her face. Sloane was crying. The crying was real this time. She tried to move. 2 security officers from the Harvard University Police Department had quietly taken position on either side of her chair. She said, into the open air, "Arlene, please. Please." I did not look at her. I looked once at Theo. She nodded. I left the stage. I walked down the aisle. I did not stop. I passed Sloane's chair without turning my head. I passed my mother's row without turning my head. The room was so silent I could hear the hum of the projector. I pushed through the rear doors into the courtyard, into the May sun. Theo followed me. She had the burgundy folder under her arm. Within 72 hours, the world I had spent 6 years not asking for had rearranged itself. Harvard Law placed Sloane's degree on hold, pending a character and fitness review. A BA standard procedure. The hold was indefinite. She would not be permitted to sit for a state bar examination in any jurisdiction without a clearance she now had no realistic path to obtaining. The Massachusetts Board of Bar Examiners formally received the referral the next morning. The Boston Globe ran the story on May 24th. The byline was Neve Halloran. The headline was straightforward. Harvard Law commencement halted as keynote reveals probate fraud against graduating student's sister. The article was thorough. It quoted Theo. It cited the affidavit, the wire records, the Las Vegas certification, the USPS receipt. It used my name. It did not, at my request, use a photograph of me. The article was shared 84,000 times in 18 hours. A P picked it up. The New York Times ran a brief in the legal section. A widely listened legal podcast led with it. Sloan deleted her Instagram within 3 hours of the Globe story posting. The internet had already saved it. The memorial scholarship page on the law school's clinical site was taken down. 11 previous donors to the scholarship filed for refunds. The clinic refunded them. The scholarship had been worth $5,000 annually. It had been awarded once. The Suffolk County District Attorney's Office issued a statement on May 28th. The matter was under review. State perjury and probate fraud charges were on the table. The FBI Boston field office took an interest in the wire fraud because the trust funds had crossed state lines from Wells Fargo's national trust operation into a Boston checking account. The investigation timeline, my attorney told me, would likely run between 18 and 30 months. Sloan was fired from her summer associate position at a big law firm in New York within 24 hours of the Globe article. Her engagement to a 2024 Harvard Business School graduate named Connor Whitlock, they had been planning an August wedding in Newport, was called off on June 3rd. Connor's family released a brief statement through a publicist saying that they wished Sloan well and would not be commenting further. On May 30th, my attorney filed a civil complaint at Suffolk Superior Court. Mortensen v. Mortensen et al. Civil Action 2025-CV-3318. Defendants were Sloan Ems Mortensen, Helena Mortensen, and Garrett Mortensen. The complaint sought repayment of the $389,000 with 6 years of interest, damages for intentional infliction of emotional distress, and an injunction prohibiting Sloan from using my name, image, or likeness in any commercial or promotional context for the remainder of her life. Theo was first chair on the case. She did not bill me. My father moved out of the house at 19 Maple Lane on June 2nd. He rented a one-bedroom apartment in Stamford, Connecticut near the train. He called me on the second day. I did not answer. He left a voicemail. 41 seconds. Arlene, I signed that paper in 2019. I did not read it. I signed it because your mother told me to sign it. That is not a reason. I am sorry. I have been a coward for 30 years. You do not have to call me back. I am paying back what I can. I am sorry. I listened to it once. I listened to it again. I did not answer. I saved the voicemail to my drive. My mother called 23 times in 9 days. I agreed to see her once. The hotel lobby of the Cambridge Marriott, June 11th. 11 in the morning. Public space. People around. 2 leather chairs by a low table. Coffee. Neither of us was going to drink. She was already there when I arrived. She had been crying. She started crying again when she saw me. I sat down across from her. I waited. I didn't know, she said. I didn't know she was going to go that far. I didn't know there was paperwork. I didn't know about Las Vegas. Sweetie, please. I am your mother. I love you. I was wrong. I am asking you to forgive me. I took a piece of paper out of my folder. I put it on the table between us, face toward her. A copy of the Harvard acceptance letter, dated March 28, 2018. Addressed to Arlene C. Mortensen. She looked at it. I said, the only sentence I said in that meeting, "You knew enough to lock the door behind me." I stood up. I walked to the lobby door. She called after me. Arlene, will you forgive me? Will you forgive me? I did not turn around. I went out into the Cambridge street and the door closed behind me, and a bus went past and a man on a bike rang his bell at a tourist who had stepped off the curb. And the world continued as if no door had been closed at all. I walked the 4 blocks to the T station with my hands in my pockets. I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel cruel. I felt the way I felt at the end of a difficult shift. The body still upright, the work done, the walking still required. On the platform, I sat on a wooden bench and watched a sparrow eat half a French fry, and I thought, I never had to convince her. I only had to stop asking her to be convinced. I rode the red line home. I made tea. I did not call her back. My parents filed for legal separation in late June. They were not living together. The separation was a formality. The civil complaint was settled in mid-August. Sloan consented to judgment for the principal, $389,000 with interest of 6 years at the federal statutory rate, plus damages of $180,000. To meet the judgment, she sold the Beacon Hill apartment. To meet the remainder, my parents sold the house at 19 Maple Lane. I did not go to the closing. The realtor's photographs of the Greenwich house went up on a Friday. The kitchen island looked smaller in the photograph than it had felt in 2018. The mailbox at the curb, Schwartz Model 1812 painted black, was visible in one of the wide shots. By the following Tuesday, the house was under contract. The buyers had 2 children and a Labrador. Theo forwarded me the public listing because she thought I might want to see it. I looked at it once and closed the tab. I had applied to Harvard Law in December of 2024. I had not told Theo. I had not told Bridget. I had submitted the application through the standard portal. I had written my essay about a 22-year-old who had died in the ICU in November, about the way the line between alive and on paper alive gets drawn by the people who decide to draw it, and what a nurse owes a patient when the line is being redrawn unfairly. I had not mentioned my family. I had not mentioned my sister. I had not mentioned an inheritance. I had written the essay as a nurse. On June 14th, I received an email from the Office of Admissions. Arlene, we have reviewed your application a second time. We would like to offer you a place in the class of 2028. The financial aid package was $109,000 in grants, no loans. I accepted that afternoon. I called Bridget before I called Theo. Bridget cried for about 3 minutes. I cried for the 3rd time in 7 years. I did not count the 3rd time as a loss. The civil settlement closed in August. I had $389,000 back, plus interest, plus damages. I paid off the $34,000 in nursing school loans. I set aside enough for tuition and rent for 3 years. I took $200,000 and I established a 501c3 called the Eleanor Halverson Memorial Fund. The fund's mission statement is one sentence: for the students whose families chose silence over them, we choose your name back. The board has 3 members: Theo Brennan, Bridget O'Shea, me. The first scholarship was awarded in late August to a 17-year-old in Hartford, Connecticut, named Maeve Donnelly. Her twin sister had been admitted to Yale that spring. Her parents had agreed to pay full tuition for the sister. They had told Maeve she should do community college and find a husband. We paid Maeve's first year at Boston University. We will pay every year after. I worked my last shift at Mass General on August 28th. Bridget brought a sheet cake. The patient I cared for in the last hour of the shift was an 81-year-old man recovering from a triple bypass. He did not know who I was. He looked up at me from his pillow and said kindly, "You're a good nurse, dear. Your parents must be very proud of you." I smiled. I told him to rest. I did not correct him. In the locker room, Bridget hugged me hard. She said, "Are you going to come back as a nurse attorney after law?" I said, "Maybe. I'd like to sue people who do to other people what my sister did to me." I cleaned out my locker. I left the badge on the shelf. Arlene C. Mortensen, R.N. I matriculated at Harvard Law in early September. The first morning of orientation, I walked through Langdale Hall with my property casebook under one arm. The hallway was full of strangers. I passed a black and white photograph hung on the wall by the registrar's office, a woman in a 1970s suit. The first black woman partner at a Boston firm, framed in oak. I stopped and looked at her face. She was not my photograph. She was not me. The photograph at the head of the cohort orientation on the first slide was of the class of 2028. It was a group photo. We had taken it the day before. I was in the third row, smiling. I am going to be a litigator. Not because Sloan was, because I want to be. If you have ever been written out of your own family, if your name has been crossed off the will, the door, the photograph, the future, I want you to hear something I had to learn alone. Your name is not theirs to give. Your name is not theirs to take. I do not call betrayal family anymore. I call it by its proper name. It is a crime. And then I call it over. If this story moved you, leave a comment and tell me. Would you have exposed her in public? Or would you have handled it privately? I will read everyone.